Hello and welcome to episode 39 of the Movie Bros podcast. We are your hosts, Duncan and Hayden. I'm Duncan, he's Hayden. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody.
Or welcome if you're new. If you are new, what this kind of is, if you've stumbled upon us, is a somewhere between 30 minutes to an hour and a half. It's kind of all over the place of a conversation slash debate, banter, ramble, whatever you want to call it. Two brothers pick a movie, watch that movie, and then we kind of talk about it. But we discuss all kinds of movies on here, all kinds of genres, anything from thriller, action, suspense, horror, comedy, romance, sci-fi, fantasy, historical epic, whatever you want to think of. If you scroll backwards, I mean, we've kind of got a little bit of
covered
everything.
all genres at this point. Well, actually, no. Have we done a Western yet? Oh, yeah, Bone Tomahawk.
Or sort of Rango? Sort of?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think in some ways Rango's more of a Western, to be honest.
Well, a lot more interesting, yes.
Yes.
Either way, if you are curious on if there's more than one way to listen to us, this podcast should be, if I did the technical side correctly, even though I'm not really sure if I did.
I'm sure it's fine.
It should be on Spotify, obviously. It should be on YouTube. So if you like, I don't know, YouTube for whatever reason, there's no video. It's just like the icon of the podcast with the audio. It's also on Apple and Amazon Music, I think. If I did it correctly. You can also find us on Instagram and @themovie_bros, where we post about what's coming up, what we just released as an episode. We try to share throughout the week some of the music and or some highlights from the movie that we're going to be talking about that week. If you have comments or suggestions on things we should be watching, that's a good way to find us. Otherwise, I think that's a bit of a ramble for a summary, but either way, Hayden, what are we talking about this week? Yeah. Jesus.
Well, the movie we talk. So we are actually not doing one, not doing two. We are doing three movies here. We're doing the Steven Soderbergh Ocean's 11 trilogy. Ocean's 11 trilogy. How would you call that, do you think?
I would call it the Ocean's trilogy. I probably wouldn't call it Ocean's 11 trilogy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that makes more sense. We're doing the Ocean's trilogy, and let me jump through some fast facts, and we can run down some IMDb information for you here. So, this is going to be slightly confusing, although I'm going to try and explain this. We're doing the Ocean's trilogy. That's 11, 12, and 13. So 2001 is when Ocean's 11 was released. 2004 is when Ocean's 12 released. And then 2007 is when Ocean's 13 released. There's a nice 3-year gap in between each. The director for all three of these is Steven Soderbergh. He's very accomplished and he has a really big filmography to choose from. This is based upon a similar heist comedy from the 60s starring, the Rat Pack, if you will. And the original writers are credited on the 2001 Ocean's 11, and those are George Clayton Johnson and Jack Russell. But they don't show up on the other ones because they're not pulling more plot from those. However, the Ocean's 11 plot is then expanded and modernized by Ted Griffin. Ocean's 12 is then supplemented with George Knopfler, and Ocean's 13 is completely written by Brian Koppelman. Music here for all three of them is by David Holmes, as well as sampling other, casino-y kind of music, if you will. But great stuff. It's like suspense jazz. It's really reminiscent of The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which I'm a big fan of, and I think Duncan is as well.
I like the blending. I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about this later, but like the blending of jazz and thriller heist. There's so much more than any one genre, and I think it plays such a big part of this. But yes, I don't know. It's just it's hard to dictate which one it is. I don't mean to interrupt, but
oh no, you're good. We interrupt each other here. It's fine. So, the original 11 heist mates, if you will, here are played by George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, Casey Affleck, Scott Conn, Carl Reiner, Bernie Mac, Elliot Gould, Eddie Jemison, Shabo Quinn. And ironically enough, this is his only 3 acting credits. He was just hired because he was a contortionist, and then they just brought him back for the other 2. And then lastly, Don Cheadle. So those are the original 11 that show
Hell
up in
yeah,
all
Don
3.
Cheadle. Hell
We'll,
yeah.
we'll get to Don Cheadle. And then secondary characters who show up in both in 1 and 2 and 3, but not all of them, obviously. We have Julia Roberts, Andy Garcia, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Eddie Izzard, Jared Harris, Robbie Coltrane, Vincent Cassell, and Al Pacino. But also there's a small army of extras because they did film these live in actual casino floors. So there's a ton of people in this, but those are the people that have the lines. Those are your main players. Well, do we want to jump into 11 then?
Yeah, let's just start. So I don't know where we haven't planned this super far out, folks, but we'll probably do one movie, take a pause, do the next movie, take a pause, do the third movie, and then maybe at the very end we'll kind of recap overall the trilogy as a trilogy. But folks, I know we've referenced recently about doing special feature episodes for a monthly holiday. This month it was supposed to be St. Patrick's Day for this coming week, but we are doing a triple feature for you this week, so we said, well, fuck it.
We underestimated how much time and planning would have to go into a 3-movie episode. So
Well, that plus, and then trying to do another 2-movie episode in like 3 days later, beyond our
yes,
other regular lives that we get busy with.
but we do have a
All
schedule,
right,
so we're still
trying.
sort of on track.
Yeah, we're doing. Okay, I would say we're doing much better than when we first started. Obviously,
Yes, the first 10 to 20 episodes are kind
probably
of
our
hit and
first 10, because I think like episode like 11 was Logan Lucky, and I feel like that was when we really first started hitting our stride.
Well, and also that's when we first started doing editing.
True, and I think that's where we started to slowly come together. At least being something that's not just like it feels super amateur. And granted, it's still very amateur, but like it feels less so now.
Yeah.
Either way, okay. So Ocean's 11, was this just? This is something that I thought of in the very first opening credits, because I think granted, I think I watched this one obviously the longest ago out of the 3, but was this? You said 2005, you said? Or 2000?
So 2001 for Ocean's 11.
How far after Batman was this for George Clooney? Because I feel like Batman did not do wonders for his career, and I feel like this almost was a restart.
I've seen several interviews with him where he thought it was going to do wonders for his career and definitely didn't.
Didn't.
Let me look.
Because, he is great in this, and he is like the suave, he is the guy. It's really, it's Ocean. It's
Batman
his
and
movies.
Robin, that sits at a strong 3 out of 10 and 12%,
Oof.
depending on where you get your reviews from.
Oof.
Which is, I think, fairly accurate.
Yeah, it's not a good movie.
Was made in 1997. So it's not that far away, but it's not like immediately after.
Sure, he probably had something in between, but like I felt like this was the age of like handsome George Clooney time.
Thou was between them.
Oh, well, that's a pretty good movie. I like it. I'm glad he went that way. Yeah, just like again, I feel like this is where he's not. He's like still he's always been the salt and pepper kind of guy.
He's
never
not
been
as
like
gray here.
correct. Like no, he's still like a younger-ish, but he's still the handsome kind of like suave, older-ish looking guy. And I think this is throughout. This is the main reason I think that the 3 movies work, because the 2 leads are him and Brad Pitt, and it's George Clooney and Brad Pitt. It just works super fucking well.
Yeah. So between Batman and Robin and Ocean's 11, George Clooney appeared in The Thin Red Line, which is a great Korean
I know of
War
it. I've
movie.
never seen it.
Yeah, it's a rough time, but it's good. 3 Kings, which is fun.
Oh,
it's also kind of a heist movie.
Again, I know of it. I've never. That's him and Mark Wahlberg, isn't it?
And Ice Cube.
Really?
It's a decent movie. It is, now that we have the Ocean's trilogy, it is certainly not his best heist movie, but it's not bad.
Sure.
And then Oh Brother Where Art Thou comes out in 2000, so it's right before Ocean's 11.
Hmm. Interesting.
And he
Okay.
was also in Spy Kids.
He was? Granted, I haven't
It
seen
says he
those in a
was.
hot minute.
Yeah, because they're not good.
I mean, keep in
I mean,
mind,
they're
if you were,
definitely
like,
aimed at children.
6? Well, yeah, obviously, like, Antonio Banderas, like, the big, like, thumb hand
Salma
people.
Hayek. Ooh,
Salma Hayek, yes.
absolutely. Or no, that's Carla Gugino. That's not Salma Hayek. I'm mistaken.
No, she's definitely in it, isn't she?
Not according to IMDb.
I don't know.
I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Does it make sense that these movies are comfort watches? I don't really like, they're not.
Oh,
I don't know
absolutely.
why they are, but they are comfort watches.
I have very good memories of watching these with Dad, and I think that's probably it.
I think it's like the peeking behind the curtain of like a or like knowing that this is a like semi complicated puzzle, but then you also are like walked through how to solve the puzzle, which I think is satisfying. Maybe that's why it's a comfort movie. I don't know.
Sure. No. I mean, I totally get that.
And it's not serious, but it's definitely not like
Well, we'll get
you
to
never
that.
feel danger. I don't know. They really pump the golds in the casinos. Wow, like the yellows and the gold.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think. I mean, I don't know if that's just their like this is what Vegas is, but that's just
Well, I mean,
super
in
apparent.
all three of them, they've pumped the reds, golds, and blacks. I mean, which looks nice, especially in number 1 and number 3. 2 is
Hmm.
more like location shots. So,
Sure.
but I mean, but yes, and this was kind of in the infancy of digital color grading, because I want to say the first big movie to do it was Oh Brother Where Art Thou. So it was kind of uncharted territory back then.
I wish. I mean, I'm glad he was in this, and I don't know if we'll maybe do at the end or at some point, but break down all the characters. But maybe this is my opportunity to. But I wish I had seen more Bernie Mac stuff because he's so great.
I know he was. I mean, he is great in this, but I agree with you. I think he did a lot more TV than
He
movies.
did. I think he had his own. I mean, he had his
I
own
mean, he
show if
had
I
the
remember
Bernie
right.
Mac show.
Yeah. Which again, I don't think I've ever seen an episode. It's just such a dumb little quirk that it's like it scratches some itch in my brain. But all the names, dude, are solid, like solid names. Like just Daniel Ocean, like all the
I
names are just like
mean, yes.
good names, dude. Good fucking names.
Well, I think what helps that, especially the character names for like the for the core 11, is
Hmm.
that they're the exact same character names from the 60s, and they haven't been updated to feel more modern. And so I think that's why they feel like more grounded names, and they don't feel, I mean, no one's coming in and having a modern sound. I don't know how else to describe it. Like
I know, I get it.
I
That's
think that's why.
I'm sure that's at least part of it because yeah, I didn't think of it that they're just basically transferring over something that was made 40 or 50 years earlier.
40, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I completely forgot because again, I think it's been a while since I've seen this, but I completely forgot that just Topher Grace is in not one but two of these movies.
I was a little bit sad he
Like,
wasn't so open 3.
well, no, it's fine, but just like I completely forgot.
Yes. I always like it when actors are playing themselves and kind of winking at the camera a bit like that. That's
Hmm.
always it's good to know that the uber rich have a sense of humor about themselves, or at least some of them.
Was this before or after Mr. and Mrs. Smith? Though I can't remember if we
So
referenced this when
Ocean's
we were talking about it the
11
other day.
is
But
before Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but Ocean's 12 is after it, which is why Brad Pitt's
it's got the
hair in
shaved head.
Ocean's 12 is buzzed and blonde.
Interesting.
Yes.
Again, I think it's because I was just such a young kid back then, but I guess I didn't realize that was like the era of Brad Pitt and George Clooney. Like that was their
Well, I mean,
time,
yeah,
dude.
because
Those are some
you got
banger
these
movies,
3
dude.
movies, then you
Yes.
had Mr. and Mrs. Smith, then you had, Troy coming out in the same kind of time span.
Hmm.
Like, Brad Pitt was killing it then, and also he's
Well,
Brad Pitt, when is he not killing it? But
I was just about to say, I was like, dude, he's been killing it for like pretty consistently for over 20 years. Sure, every actor has got like missteps here and there, but like, come on.
Well, I mean, ironically enough, both George Clooney and Brad Pitt were thrust back together in a sort of similar situation casting wise in last year's Wolves, which I'm still kicking myself that it's a Apple,
Oh, I know, I'm bummed,
streaming
dude.
exclusive because I would love to watch that because they're a great dynamic.
Well, so what I've heard, I mean, again, side ramble by the end, that's what this podcast does. I've heard it's not like a great movie, but it's very fun because, again, it's literally the whole movie is just their dynamic. That's the whole movie. So,
Hmm.
yes, I am also bummed that it's an Apple exclusive.
I would also go out on a limb and say that this is, I mean, all three of them, but just in general, especially the first one, maybe one of the most well cast movies ever.
Well, yeah.
Like everyone is great except for one of them, in my opinion. But just it's so good. Like from Casey Affleck to Matt
Oh,
Damon. I
no,
mean,
they're,
just everyone's great except for
yes,
Don
they're
Cheadle.
all fucking great. Oh, I like, okay, you know what? Okay, let's break this
Let's
down.
have this out
Hold
now.
up. No, no, no. We're not going to do just one character. I think we should go character by character and talk
That's
about
fine.
pros
That's
and
fine.
cons and our thoughts on them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm assuming you probably, I mean, you just listed off everyone who is in this. You probably have a list of all the 11. Let's start
I
there.
have all the actors. I don't have all their characters.
Hold on, I'll pull it up. All right, so the 11.
Yes.
Let's start with the easy ones. Let's start with Danny.
I
Thoughts?
mean, yeah. So I would group Danny, Rusty, and Linus all together as like they're definitely the three main leads. I think they're all fantastic.
Well, the thing is, it's weird. They kind of they. It's. I would not say
I
Linus is
mean,
a lead. They
I
try to
think
slowly make
in
him a lead,
I would
but he
say
is not a
so
lead.
definitely in 12 and 13 he's more of a lead, but I think you're right in 11 it is certainly a George Clooney Brad Pitt vehicle.
Hmm.
I think they play off of each other really good. I think that Brad Pitt is certainly the more prone to I guess I shouldn't say Brad Pitt. Rusty
Yeah,
is more
Rusty Ryan.
prone to
Again, great name.
yes. Yeah, I mean, sounds like a comic character.
Who's always eating.
I mean, he's a growing boy. What I was gonna say is I feel like he is the more like rash individual, and George Clooney's the more rational planner. I think
Hmm.
both of those are a really good dynamic, especially for the leads of your film.
Well, and I mean, he's. I think we'll talk about this a little later, but you can even see it in how they dress. Like Rusty has these kind of more flamboyant suits. I actually read an article about this because I was trying to find one of the shirts he was wearing. Like he goes much for different textures and different colors, and obviously it's Brad Pitt. He's going to pull it off, but George Clooney basically sticks to the same like dark turtleneck or shirt or something like that,
Yeah,
and a jacket, and it looks very suave. It looks very good, but like
but it
you
does
can
help
almost
to see the you know
the character.
different styles between the two characters.
Well, that then got me thinking when we get to a couple of the other characters that a lot of their personality, some of it goes down to just their wardrobes.
Oh yeah,
Like, I mean,
I mean both
anything
of the older
from
gentlemen, yes.
yes, yes, that was, or even one of the brothers who always has like the kind of douchey leather jacket. We'll talk
I,
about it.
I fucking love the brothers; they're great.
Well, they're fantastic, but I like Linus, aka Matt Damon. It's I like that they sort of throughout. Obviously, the first one it's a little light mentioning that he is comes from like a family of thieves, basically.
Yes,
Uh,
sort of.
and then obviously they give a little bit more for the second and third movie, but it's never like, oh, it's you only got this because of you know these
Well,
people.
so I agree, and I think that that is something that all three of these do fairly well. Is that they within all of the fast-paced back and forth dialogue, there's constantly references to outside
Hmm.
people, to outside
Yes.
things that have happened, to lingo that the audience isn't good. Like it does a
Oh,
really good
100%.
job with the dialogue of building a world that feels like it exists
Real.
outside of the scene that we're watching, which is an
Well, yeah,
important
it
thing to
feels like
do, and a lot of movies
it
don't do it.
feels like a world that's been around forever, that
Yes.
these people live in, that we are just peering in for this small segment of. Yes.
Hmm.
Like the amount of different like kinds of cons that they reference. that they've all
I
got different
wanted to remember
names.
to write
Oh,
them all down because they're
I was
fans.
thinking about that, dude. I was like, should I just find a list of this somewhere? Because I
I
love it.
wanted to, but I'm like, yeah, I was too busy. Honestly, I was just too busy enjoying myself revisiting all these because it had been a while for me to sit down and watch all three of these.
Well, at one point I wrote, because they reference it when or Danny and Rusty are first sitting down and thinking about it. He's like, oh, you need a Boski, a Jim Brown, a Miss Daisy, an Ella Fitzgerald.
Yep.
Like, and there's several more throughout the movies, but just, yes, I agree that they use that much a lot throughout the movie. What do you think of Ruben?
Yeah, I mean he's fun. He's good. I love his glasses.
I like that they never inherently say that he is like the classic Jewish, like bankroll
I
guy, but he
they
is.
really got close there sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I think he's fun as a financier without it being on the nose that he's a rich Jewish guy because that's kind of a stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that this wasn't like over the top with that.
Well, maybe, I mean, before we go to the rest of the characters, what I like because there's 11 of them, each one can have their own very specific, like, quirky lane, and
Yeah,
you have enough interactions throughout 3 movies that different pairings of people, if you put them in a room together, because they're all so very different from each other, you get a lot of cool, like, either conversations or, like, physical whatever's going on, like, the amount of different times, oh, these 2 people haven't, like, probably talked to each other much. Oh, let's put them in a room. Like
they could
Ruben
do that a
and
lot. Yeah,
Don Cheadle, right? Don Cheadle writing letters to Ruben. Like, what the fuck was that? Like,
I'm a little bit. I mean, we'll get to it in three, but
we'll
like
get to it.
I'm a little bit sad that we never actually get to hear the letters.
Well, okay, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. There's a line that when they first talk to Ruben, and he's like, "You guys are crazy. You're gonna need a crew that's half just as crazy as you are." And then he
Hmm.
looks at them, and I think I even posted this on our Instagram story. But when he says, "Who do you have in mind?" Oh, dude, 5 out of 5 line. I fucking love that shit.
I mean, there's a lot of just. I mean, there's a lot of just really good encapsulated scenes that are just cool for the sake of being cool. Like, I guess if I was to like critically look at this and be like, people don't really talk like this, and
Sure.
these characters are a little bit flat. It's just cool because it's cool.
Mm-hmm. Because you literally go right from that scene to basically it's you can call it a montage because it is a montage, but it's not like I don't know. It doesn't feel as montagey as other montages do, but it's basically like Rusty collecting all the different people.
Yeah.
And while he does that, they're also breaking down what that character brings to the table, so you don't have to do a whole backstory later on. Like, you already know, oh, this is what this person does.
Yes.
And it's pretty quick. Like,
And
when it's pretty early on, I think it's, that whole scene, by the time they're like, whenever they're meeting up to talk about the heist, that's 20 minutes, dude. I checked the time. This movie flies.
I mean, and I would say that for pretty much all of them, with maybe the exception of two, is that it goes
Yeah,
pretty
a
quick.
little bit.
Like,
Well, I mean, again, we'll talk about it.
yes, we'll talk about it.
Thoughts on Saul? I like
Well,
that.
I
I
mean,
mean,
Saul's fun. I like that he looks essentially like a guy who enjoys fishing and sitting on a porch.
yeah, I like that he's obviously. I think they touch on it more in. I think it was 2. Yeah, I think they touch on it in 2. Uh, where he stopped doing heists and he's just at home with his wife, and then he gets bored.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
yes.
like,
Tired of
obviously
her nagging him.
he's been a con man or whatever for a long, long time, and then they have to convince him to get back into it. And that's
Hmm.
another reason why there's 11. You're going to see not just a broad range of like kinds of characters. You also have like super young, very like green, like Linus is pretty new to this kind of thing, versus
Yep.
Saul, like the old dog kind of thing. Okay, let's get to Basher. Let's just get it out of the way.
Let's talk about Basher. Um, I want to preface that I think that Basher is a very necessary character in all three movies. I don't have an issue with his character. I just don't think Don Cheadle pulls off a British accent convincingly at all, and it sticks out in a such a well casted trilogy is that he's the one that doesn't really land for me.
I think I have so much fun with it, I don't even notice it, 'cause because yes, maybe his accent isn't great, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but because he's rhyming and, like, the amount of like, if you put the subtitles on, it's actually really fun. Um,
I since I had to get these through Amazon, I absolutely had the subtitles on. And I would have missed some of the dialogue. Yeah.
yeah, and, like, how his brain works and how he connects like, he says something, and they're like, "Wait, what?" And then he says one thing, and it's, like, 3 steps in order to actually get to the sentence that he
Oh
said.
yeah.
It's
Again,
fantastic.
I have no issue with the character. I just wish it was played by someone else.
But who,
And
Hayden?
before
Who?
I don't know. I'm just saying I refuse to believe that there is not a black actor who is actually from Britain that they could
Who,
have
Hayden?
got in the
Who?
year 2000. Get Idris
No.
Elba.
He's too handsome. You're I think that's why it kinda works because
What, you
your
don't like
handsome
Don Cheadle?
guys are the leads. Don't it's not the same thing.
I mean, again, that is a minor complaint of mine. It just stuck out in such a good all-around cast that if I had to find fault with any of them, is that I don't really care for his accent, but his character is a lot of fun anyway.
And what about Frank Catton?
I mean, it's hard for me to have an opinion on any of these characters other than they're great and I love them. But like, yeah, Frank is awesome. He's really funny.
We'll
He
talk
doesn't
about it
do a
when we
whole lot in number two,
that's what I was about to say. I was like, "We'll
unfortunately.
talk about it when we get there," but he does not do a whole lot.
Well, I feel like lots of people, or I feel like lots of the cast don't do a whole lot in number two. That one is
Yeah,
very much a more focused on George Clooney, Brad Pitt thing,
of course.
but I mean, obviously still fun.
Livingston Dell, which again, great name, and the I don't know where I've never seen this guy before. I don't know where they found him. He's fantastic as this character
Oh yeah,
in
I mean,
all of the
he
movies.
just oozes nervousness.
Yes, it's so like it's so good. And then at one point, he decides to be a stand-up comic in a Matador. It's so good, dude.
Oh,
Oh,
that was
but
so. I
the
mean, just a
all of it,
horrible, cringy scene. Oh my god.
just anything from like when they first introduce him, where he's working for I think it's the CIA or the FBI, and he's like in the van and telling the CIA guys to not touch stuff. Fantastic. But the brothers, they might be my favorite.
I mean, I really like Matt Damon, but they're a close like they are vying for second or like they're really good, especially as a pair. Because not that they're
Well,
not
yeah,
funny like on their own, but together they're so good.
yeah. I mean, I think I don't know because I was thinking of is one do I prefer one or the other? But like
Well,
there are
it
several instances
you
throughout the
rarely
movies
see
where
them not together.
there's a few times like Casey Affleck is in the car with Ruben at the end of 11, where
Yeah,
he's like using the remote control to control the van, and he's still fucking about and having a good time. There's a few points, but yeah, the juxtaposition between the two, where one is like not the kind of a meathead, but he's kind of a meathead.
Scott Conn, yeah.
Which
Well, I mean,
again for the
they
longest time,
definitely lean into that by giving him,
well, yes,
a faux hawk and handlebar mustache. Like he almost looks Australian if that makes any sense.
yeah, the leather jacket, the faux hawk, yeah, but then Casey Affleck is the kind of scrawny, but still, yeah, I don't know,
I mean,
they're
with the
great,
greatest
they're
respect to
great.
Casey Affleck, outside of like Manchester by the Sea, he always plays the same guy, which is fine because he's great at it.
We already talked about the amazing Yen.
We had not talked about the amazing Yen. No, I mentioned a fun fact during the opening, but we haven't actually talked about him yet.
Okay, well, the amazing Yen, I would say I think I get why. I mean, I think he was in it the right amount. I don't think they really could have used more of him to make it more than what it was.
Yeah. Well,
I like
I'm
that.
glad they never had him speak any English because
That's
part
what I
of
was
the
about to say.
jokes are that he does only speak Cantonese, so you have a lot of primarily Linus translating for him, and I think
Well, it's
that
either Linus or Rusty.
helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, But I mean, something that I've noticed, just watching all three of these is that this was made in a time before we had super, super convincing like body replacement CGI.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of scenes of him just actually doing all of his contortion stuff, actually jumping around all of these, you know, elevator shafts and stuff. It's just really impressive.
When I can't remember who they were talking about. Oh no, Danny Ocean and Rusty were talking about who they should recruit, and they were referencing some guy, and they're like, "Oh, he's dead" or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, did you send flowers?" And then Rusty, super casually, and again, they brush this aside, don't talk about it again. This is, I think, is apparent throughout the movies where they have these great one lines and then just keep going. He said, "Oh, I
Yeah.
dated his wife for a while." So good, so good.
I mean, that's kind of a running joke that no matter what situation they're talking about, Rusty has dated someone who has connections to whatever's going on. Like even in
Yes,
2 and 3.
yes, I like that. Again, we referenced this earlier, but the slang, like, "Oh, we've got a grease man." That kind of thing. Like, oh,
I think it was just enough because I think if it was like constant, it would
mhm. It'll
become
get confusing.
like, well, not only that, but it would sound like not real, I guess. I think it's the right amount of suspension of disbelief about how this is how these characters would talk. I feel like
Mhm.
if it was more, it would seem,
Like they're
I don't
pushing
know,
it.
forced. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it, I get it. I had
In a
forgotten
weird
these
way,
movies.
especially this first one and a little bit number 3, it makes me want to visit Vegas.
No, it doesn't.
Like,
It does not make me wanna visit
I
Vegas,
mean,
no.
I don't know. I would say gambling doesn't sound interesting to me, but like, I don't know, it kind of makes you want to go and look around at all these huge buildings and things like it. I think it does a good job of, I don't know how to describe it. It does a good job of romanticizing a casino.
I mean, I would agree between the lighting, the music, everything, yes, I get it, but I'm good, I don't think I need to go there.
You don't see me buying plane tickets or anything. I'm just saying I kind of made me think about that a little bit.
I had forgotten these movies had so many wipes and transitions that made me think of Star Wars. Like, I all the, like,
Well, see,
wipe
I
across,
I
right up,
hadn't even put
down,
that
slides.
together, but yeah, kinda.
So a lot of movies, like, there's no transition, it's just cut to the next scene
And then
because
some
this is
movies,
such a,
especially
like,
stuff like Multiverse of Madness, is really in your face with just really hard, not great wipes.
you say Multiverse of Madness, but, like, I think we talked about this on this podcast, Hayden. I rewatched that recently. It's not as bad as I remember. It's not very, very good, but it's not as bad as I remember.
Oh, I don't remember it being bad. I just remember it being not good. So in all three of these, there are technical leaps of logic that is required to accept what's going on. And I think in the first one, it's definitely that they have a portable EMP that they can just take into Las Vegas and no one notices. Do you think that works? Do you think it doesn't?
I think it works. I think this is keep in mind, if this came out in 2000, they probably filmed it in 1999. This is pre 9/11,
It's a
and they
wild
stole it
concept to
from.
think about.
Yes, I know. Um, and there might be people listening that weren't even fucking alive or conscious of the world at that
Yeah.
time.
Well,
Who
well,
knows?
we've talked about that before.
Either way, um, yeah, no, I think it's realistic enough. I think for a heist movie where they're stealing like $160 million, I think
Yeah.
you can suspend a certain amount of disbelief because there's a lot of this movie that I mean, it, it's a crazy convoluted heist, and it still sort of makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I would say it doesn't seem like realistic, but it seems to work within its own set of, world logic, if you will.
No, I get
Like,
that.
no, if this actually happened at a casino like this, there's no way I can see that it would actually work. Especially number 3 and number 2. But like, definitely it works within the movie's own like set world, I guess.
I wish I had maybe like taken a screenshot of the screen or something because I wrote this down, but I can't even remember what it looked like. But the set design in the room, honestly, all the movies, the set design in the casinos and out of the casinos is really great. I really love it. But uh, the room that Saul is getting fitted for his suit in, where Danny's like, "You good, Saul?" And he's like, "Don't you ever talk to me like that, Daniel." The room is fucking gorgeous, and of course now I
Yeah.
can't even picture it. What are your thoughts on it's Julia Roberts, right? Yeah, Julia Roberts.
Yes.
Do I I've never understood it, dude. What are your I just
Julia Roberts is fine in my like. I don't get the cultural thing about her, especially back in the early 2000s, where she was in every single romantic comedy and showing up all over the place. Like she's fine,
like I've
but
yeah.
I don't know that I've ever understood her huge appeal.
Well, just there's like the very first scene where they basically introduce her. Linus is talking to Rusty like, "Oh, here she comes down the stairs. This is the best part of my day," and like I think it's maybe like how they did her hair in that scene, but she just does not look. I I don't get it, and I'm not trying to.
I don't believe her to be very attractive either, but I think for me, I think she has giant fish lips.
I don't even know if it. I don't know if. I'm not trying to like let's break down this woman's physical appearance or anything like that, but just
It's
like
Julia
just
Roberts. I think she'll survive.
no, I get that. I'm just saying like for a good portion of the movie, that was kind of like her. That was her role. Was like this is the quote unquote super attractive wife that they are. Him and Benedict are kind of fighting over, and I've never
Kind
understood it. That's all.
of. Yeah, I mean, back in the year 2000, maybe not the choice I would have gone with, but for
I don't know who
such
else
a
I'd put in there that
solidly
would
cast movie, Angelina Jolie.
see. The thing is, I think those people are too big. Even back then, they're too big.
Hmm, right, but it's George Clooney and Brad Pitt. Even back then, I mean, I don't know if that argument makes any sense.
Uh, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. Um, I love Danny Garcia as
Yeah,
frickin' what's his name.
great.
He's great. Looks like
Benedict.
he's having a great time too,
Mm-hmm.
and I do like that that he shows up in the other two.
Yes, I agree. I'm glad they brought him back. I thought, oh, well, they're just gonna get a different antagonist or whatever you want to call it for the second and third, and they sort of do. But I'm glad they almost add him to the 11. Like he's not really a good guy, but he's definitely not a bad. I don't know.
I mean,
It's
he's
a
definitely
fun
there to
way that
make
they
money no
decide to
matter
play
what's
it.
going on.
Yes.
I mean, I think I mentioned this to you when we were watching 12 together. I continually get him confused with the guy who plays Dracula in the Van Helsing movie with Wolverine in it. I know it's not him,
It's
but
not
they
him.
look
I don't.
really similar.
It's just because they both have widow's peaks. That's really the only thing, Hayden.
No, and they got like the same nose shape. They have very pointy chins. To me, I think they're very similar.
All right. Okay. I mean, I don't see it, but whatever. Again, I wrote this down. Not quite jazz music. Is it funk? Like, what would you call this?
Funky jazz. I mean that's. I'm not trying to make a joke. But like, I think that is. It definitely bounces back between the two, especially in the later ones.
Sure.
But I absolutely love the music from this. I
It's so good.
had forgotten about it. I've been listening to all three of them all week.
Yes.
Been great.
There's a couple tracks specifically on Spotify that I've saved from these where it is I think it's the official tracks, but they will like squeak in a little bit of the actual movie and then they play
Yeah,
the
they
music.
squeak in some of the dialogue. I'm never a fan of that.
In little bursts, sure. When it's like feels like it's like a remix that someone made of the movie, I don't like it.
Well, that was a lot more common back in the early 2000s. Like, I owned the soundtracks for The Matrix, and in the first one, sometimes the soundtrack, bits of music will have some of the dialogue preceding the actual music coming in. I don't know why they did it, but I'm glad they don't do it any longer.
The next thing I've gotten is Barney Rubble. Trouble. See, like those little things. That's why I maybe it's a bad accent, but I really don't notice, dude.
I mean, I guess I noticed because when I rewatched all three of these to so we have something to talk about. I'm maybe not more critical than I would be normally, but I'm definitely looking for more things to talk about.
Sure. No, I
So I
get that.
guess I noticed the accent more.
Something that I think I noticed specifically, I mean, it's more apparent in the first one, and they do a pretty good job. Second and third is the timing of everything. Like I said, like 20
These are
minutes
fairly
in, they've
quick moving
explained.
movies.
Well, they're quick moving movies, but they never like everything fits together the way it's supposed to. Like in your brain, you're like, oh, this just makes sense, and the movies never try to like expand more than they know what their story wants to be, and they don't try to go beyond that story. If that makes sense.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of like fluff, if you mean.
Yes, like yes, sure, they'll reference someone's dad or mother, or like they'll do a little bit of side stuff. Oh, like they want to talk to Topher Grace for a couple minutes, sure, but like all of it is in service to the main plot of this is a heist movie. The combination, like, I know I referenced this already, but like all the different combinations of the characters together, but Matt Damon and Bernie Mac together, which I would have never thought put those people in a
They don't
room.
have a lot of scenes, unfortunately.
But no, just the one where he basically is calling him racist is
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic. And then uh I don't know, I don't think we ever get the guy's name. I don't even know if he's credited with a role. But the like van salesman guy that Bernie Mac does the whole handshake moisturizer bit,
Yep.
also fantastic.
Well, I
Um,
mean, Bernie Mac with anyone in these is just really, really funny. Like, I mean, we'll get to it later with the other one.
I like that Rusty was, again, this is towards the end of the movie, but Rusty as the almost like soap opera doctor at the very end when Saul fakes his heart attack or whatever.
I would bet you
So
that
good.
that was a reference to George Clooney being in General Hospital.
It's like quite possible. Maybe it's like again, maybe this is just a little tick of mine, but the satisfying little sound of when the glow sticks drop down the elevator that they, of course, they had to put in the like that every I think of movies as like every second, both visually and audibly, are a choice that was made. So if you're
Yeah.
seeing it or you're hearing it, it's because they want you to see it or hear it. So there's like it's literally, I think it's about 2 seconds. It's a shot of Matt Damon, George Clooney dropping their glow sticks down the elevator shaft, and there's the sound of them like whipping by. So very satisfying. But like again, there's those little things that they don't really need to put in the movie, but it still makes it more enjoyable.
And that's kind of how I feel about a lot of the dialogue. I mean, yes, we are telling the story, we're moving the plot forward, but so much of it is just a fun back and forth for the sake of there being fun back and forth.
100%. Like, dude, the batteries bit where they click the like obviously they build tension up. Oh no, Yen is stuck on the door, and then the clicker doesn't work. That's just funny stuff, dude.
Yep. Well, or the whole bit of there being a whole long bit of dialogue about how, oh, the EMP might, zap your privates and make you infertile. And
Mhm.
again, no reason for that to be in there, but it's just funny.
Yes, 100%. Uh, Saul in the elevator shaft again. I think it's about maybe a second of the movie. It's just a shot of him like slowly unkneeling when they're pretending to be the SWAT team, and he looks super nervous, like holding on to the rope right before they descend. Super very very funny. When when Benedict finally figures out that it's like a fake vault, basically. I don't know why this line has stuck in my head probably since the first time I saw this. I think it's because it's his accent too. He says, "Somebody made a duplicate of my vault," and he makes a really weird act, like a I don't know if it's a pause or like a explanation on vault. I don't know why it has always stuck with me, but um, yeah, it's just something I've always picked every single time I watch this. Really, the only other thing I had for Ocean's 11 specifically was, and they use this. I think they use this in 12 and or 13. I can't remember, but uh, after they complete the job, nothing is said. They just go out and stare at the fountain and the buildings, and Claire de Lune plays, which is a beautiful piece of music.
Oh, it's one of my favorite pieces of class, and it shows up in all three of them.
Uh, so nice, and just literally just the pan shot of the music playing, the fountain going, just pans from person to person.
Yep.
Super good. Ah, Just
Well, I
it,
mean, so this is shot by Steven Soderbergh as well as directed. And I would just say, I mean, all three of them are just gorgeous to look at. I mean, yeah, they're fun and they're quick and things are happening, but like just absolutely beautiful use of color, the framing, the
mhm.
amount of like consistent movement going on in any given shot. It's just there's so much to like visually here.
And I don't think we've referenced it yet, but I mean, it's apparent in I think all three of them that the amount of just one shot that just continuously goes and goes, and you're just following this person through a crowd, and this happen, and
I noticed it more in two, but yeah, that definitely happens.
well, to reference something maybe towards the end of the podcast, but uh, the director has a new movie out, which is like a espionage spy thriller thing called Black Bag, and I was setting it up today at my work, and literally the first opening scene is an entire just one shot of you don't even see the character's face. You're just basically walking right behind him through the
Cool.
maze of this like Amsterdam club. Super fucking cool. And it totally made me think of all these other movies.
Well, depending on what the reviews are for Black Bag, maybe we go watch that.
Well, again, I only watched a little bit of it today when I was setting up, and it looks again. I don't think it's gonna be like amazing, but it does look good,
Okay. Well, what do you give Ocean's 11?
dude. This is a fucking 5 out of 5. This is a perfect movie.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. I think the especially the first one, I mean, it's great. It's a 5 out of 5.
Yes, there's nothing. I mean, yes, if you are really looking for faults, sure, you could probably find them somewhere, but I mean, music, casting, script, uh, costuming, set design, direction, everything. You're,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's gonna walk away from this and be like, "Oh, I had a bad time."
It is certainly crowd pleasing, yes.
Mhm. And sure, maybe if you're looking to, like, really maybe what's the right word? Maybe, like, feel something like you don't wanna it's not a super deep movie, sure,
Yeah. And
but
again,
fuck off.
if I really wanted to find an issue with this is that it is kind of emotionally a little bit flat, but that's, it's a heist comedy. You're not watching it for that.
Exactly.
Well, folks, we're going to give you a little bit of a break, and we'll be right back to talk about Ocean's 12.
And we're back. So that was Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12 time, yeah.
Jumping back in 2004 here. So, of the 11 that we've already talked about, the new cast members we're going to add this time are going to be Catherine Zeta-Jones and Vincent
Oh my
Cassell.
god. Oh
Uh,
my god.
what?
No, just they're even both of them are just insanely attractive people.
Vincent Cassell, I think, kind of looks like a bicycle seat. I think his head is shaped weird.
He is, but I don't know. He's got this not
I
I'm
mean,
not
he
I'm
looks
not saying
French, I guess.
he's very French, and that's why he is I mean, he is the French guy, but like he is like the French guy.
So this is obviously the sequel, and they definitely took the normal recommendation of if you're going to do something again, do it bigger and better. And better is, I think, subjective here, but they definitely went bigger. We're going to different locations. We're doing a different heist. We're completely leaving the U.S. We're shooting on location in Europe, in Paris, and Amsterdam. This could not have been cheap, but I absolutely love that they paid the price to do that. Uh, we may joke about it a couple of times here, but both of us are just enamored with Catherine Zeta-Jones in this.
Oh,
She's
if
beautiful.
you're not, there might be some even if
If you don't come away from this thinking, "Oh,
there's no
Catherine
way, dude.
Zeta-Jones is unbelievably attractive," you might want to do some soul searching and come to terms with your own sexuality as a man.
Oh, no, I'm saying even if you are there are some people regardless of, like, who they are, like, there are some men who I'm like, "Oh, even though I'm obviously very straight, there's no way around not admitting that you are a very attractive person." That's all I'm saying. Like, even women can be like, "Oh, yeah, she's very
Like George
attractive."
Clooney.
Uh,
You're saying
I
George Clooney is not an attractive man.
no, I get that he is attractive, but there are like obviously everyone's got different, I don't know, views.
No, that's
Like
fine.
I'm saying like Henry Cavill is like one of those kinds of people, I feel like. Like if you're a dude, you can still
That's
be like,
almost an
"Oh yeah, that's
unfair
a."
one, but
No,
yes.
but you see what I'm saying though, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Catherine Zeta-Jones is like a Henry Cavill, is what I'm saying.
Oh, she's so good looking in this. Just
Yes,
oh
she
my
is.
god. Um, how do you feel about the plot of this one compared to the
It's
first one?
okay. Like I appreciate that they tried to do something different. A like location wise, and B like it's an entirely different. I want to say format because okay, we've already met all the people, so almost 20 to 30 minutes of the movie you don't need to do. You don't have to assemble the cast again, more or less. You can do that in
Yeah.
like 4 minutes. Um, but I've never really loved the whole heists that they choose to get into for the second movie, if I'm being honest.
I think I mean, and we'll probably mention this more when we talk about number 3, but I think so much of what makes the first movie work so unbelievably well is that it is a Vegas set movie,
Yes,
and that
agreed.
so much of I mean, I still enjoy Ocean's 12 a great
Oh,
deal,
I do
but
too. And
it is
actually,
certainly missing some of that chemistry that you get with that location, I think.
it's missing it, but for the longest time, I really was not a fan. But I was like, it's good, but it's not great. But like when we rewatched it, I was like, oh, I actually enjoy a lot of this more than I remember. No, it's not
That's
as
fair.
good as number one, but I still actually like this a lot. Part of it, yes, is the change of scenery. That way, you feel even better when it goes back to Vegas for number three. The
Yeah.
differences in cast, Catherine Zeta-Jones is great. Yes, obviously, yes, we've talked about it physically. She's a specimen, but yeah, I think as
Oh, yeah, I mean,
a as a
her character in
character,
Mrs. Fun.
yes, and I think it's a cool, interesting dynamic that they chose to go through. Because yes, we've referenced how Rusty somehow has more or less female connections all over the place, and this is the one that this is his. I don't want to say the one that got away, but like the one that got away, and she is Interpol, and her dad is like a world famous thief. Fucking such a cool background.
Well, I like that she's almost the female equivalent of Linus.
Yeah, sort of. I
I
never
mean,
really thought of it
not that
that way,
like
but
their characters are the same, but like they have similar backstories, I guess.
to a certain degree, yes, yes,
I do feel like number 2 takes a little bit to get going
it does.
compared I mean, granted, it's the opening is still fun because, it makes sense. The guy who they robbed in the first one is now coming back against them. That's
Hmm.
fun. I get it. That's cool. But it does feel like that Ocean's 12 at least takes a good 20 minutes to really get stuck into the heist plot, whereas the other one, you were right there.
I do, however, like the cold open basically in this, where it's just Brad Pitt in Italy hopping out the window after he finds out that she's onto him.
That's a great bit because it looks like it's
That
all
scene is
done
so good.
of like a one shot in camera, which they
Hmm.
really do a lot of in 12. I think even more so than 11, that there's a lot of just long steady cam tracking shots.
Yes, uh, and I actually maybe should have brought it up in Ocean's 11, but like the almost frosted tips that he has in 11 kind of works, and then they flip to this where he's more or less like a buzzed head, also works.
I
It's
feel
Brad Pitt.
like well, I was gonna say it's Brad Pitt. I feel like I mean, there's even a gag scene in number 3 where he shows up with long blonde hair and a goofy mustache pretending to be a
Hmm.
scientist, and he
Yeah.
still looks good because he's Brad Pitt. I don't think the hairstyle matters.
Was I think that they paired him well with like again, I'm glad that they didn't go the route of like Angelina Jolie or Jennifer Aniston. They went at like
Yeah.
a sidestep to that for his counterpart, like Julia Roberts. I kind of it makes sense for George Clooney because I don't know that I feel like they work together, whereas Brad Pitt's a little bit more like zesty. I don't know.
I guess I would put that as I'm glad they went with someone who wasn't American because I think it adds more fun. It plays more against his character, I
Hmm.
think. And obviously it fits into the second one's plot very, very well. one of the things that I had written down here is that towards the midpoint of the movie, there is a diving scene, which you hated.
Not that I hate it, but just something that I again, I've seen this movie before and I never really thought about it because it's the scene is again maybe 12 seconds of the movie, I think, something like that.
Yeah,
And
but
I
he's
feel like
using a
there's
magic rebreather.
well, it's that would be a second stage regulator that's not connected to anything and somehow can breathe. But then when they show him swimming, he's literally just there's no bubbles coming out. It's just him holding his breath. And they use basically the exact same thing in the Phantom Menace, Star Wars, and I had the same problem with that. I like that they randomly had Hagrid in this for maybe like 10 minutes.
It's so weird whenever I see him not in a beard.
Sure, but like the whole Lost in Translation bit with him is
It's
so goddamn good, dude.
so funny. Like, and I want to believe that that was just all improvised because
I don't
because
know.
uh because Matt Damon really looks confused the whole time.
I don't know though if George Clooney and Brad Pitt and I can't think of his name, but Hagrid could come up with all that stuff.
Robbie Coltrane.
Thank you. Yeah, so good. So goddamn good, dude.
I mean, it is hard to do bad cinematography of Rome. Like, I mean, even I
True.
mean, there's an Adam Sandler movie that takes place in Rome, which is kind of a send up of Knives Out. Um, that
Oh,
also looks
what's that called?
Destination Wedding or something like that.
No. It's a murder or something. Or he's like a detective,
Regardless, I'm
though.
just saying,
Yeah.
like,
No, never mind. Keep going. Keep going.
I'm just saying, like, yeah, and that also looks really pretty. But just like we mentioned in talking about 11, that they're like the cinematography is super beautiful, even if it's just of Vegas. Here, it is absolutely gorgeous. Like, again,
Well,
this
there's a.
makes me want to visit like Italy
Oh,
because of
for
how
sure.
well it's
This,
shot.
yes. There's several scenes where like they're like I think it's when they're casing out that house where the guy doesn't lead the agoraphobic guy, uh,
Yep.
and all like there's it's nighttime and all the windows are lit up with this really like rosy gold color, and that's
And
like
then
a
they have
base
the boat in front of it, and it's like
with the
Kelly
blue.
blue.
Yes, beautiful,
Gorgeous
dude.
stuff.
Fucking beautiful.
I mean, not that the colors were bad in 11. Obviously, we
Not
loved
at
it, but
all.
like, I think they are definitely a little bit more fine tuned here.
I think this is the maybe dumb romantic in me. I don't know what the right wording is, but like, and I think I also shared this on our Instagram story. So if you don't follow us or want to know about this stuff, folks, well, you're missing out. But uh, when they like do a kind of a I don't know like a
They do a
throwback or whatever
flashback.
to. Thank you. I couldn't think of the right word. I was going to say throwback, and that's incorrect. But when Brad and Catherine Zeta-Jones meet, oh, so
It's
fucking
a nice
cute,
scene.
dude.
Oh yeah.
It's a very nice scene. That's how, of course, like in your brain, like, oh, that's how I want to meet someone, even though it never really happens that way.
Well, also, none of us are Catherine Zeta-Jones or Brad Pitt.
Or in Italy, yes.
Yes,
Or getting chased
those
by the
things do
cops,
help.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think. I mean, granted, 11 was this way as well, but I think even more so in the costumes in this one, everyone looks like they just stepped out of a modeling gig. I mean,
Hmm.
even people like Saul and
Well, keep in mind now they've
uh,
had money.
yeah, well, kind of.
They've got money now.
They
Come
are
on.
now out of money in this one, though.
Yes and no.
I like, and I think that it's ironic that after they just robbed a bunch of casinos in the other one, Brad Pitt is now owning hotels in this one. I think that's a nice bit of irony there,
And
and that
like
he's terrible
losing
at it.
yeah, he's terrible at it. Yeah.
And again, we bring back Topher Grace, and he's having a stereotypical
Yes.
rocker meltdown in his
Yes.
hotel room.
There's a bit that's been shared so many times, and if you haven't seen the movie, well, you probably have
I'm
seen
sure
the
you've
clip.
seen this
However,
bit.
the "How old do you think I am?" is so good. Oh my god, it's so funny, dude.
I mean,
It's
pretty
so
much that
even just
the
even
whole
just thinking
sequence at
about
the
it,
train
dude.
station, just comedy gold.
Well,
Just hilarious.
first it's Linus asking Rusty, "Can I ask you a question?" And then Russ
Don't
is
just
like,
ask
"Are
me a
you? Is that
question.
a yeah? Just is that the question? What the fuck are you doing?" And then the brothers talking about where they think Yen has been. He's lost in a bag somewhere, which is a fun little bit throughout the movie.
Yep, yep, yep.
And then oh dude, the
And then he
George
goes and asks
Clooney,
Basher,
Don Cheadle, and the brothers. Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's so good.
"What? You
It's
think I'm
hilarious
52? Only from the neck up. What the
from the
fuck
neck
is that?"
up. Yeah.
So in this one, they're obviously not robbing casinos. They're stealing a golden egg thing. How do you feel that stacks up as like a prize? Like, do you think the heist part of this heist movie is as good?
See, that's really the one. That's I think that's really the one thing that doesn't do it for me. This movie, the heist doesn't feel as heisty. Like I get obviously the egg is like it's probably worth the money, but it's
So, and I do agree, but I think the reasoning for that is that this one is not as focused.
sure it's not about the heist.
Well, no. It is about the heist, but it is
Mm,
not like because first they're robbing the agoraphobic guy, then they're trying to rob the museum, then they're trying to do this. I think what works really well in 11 and in 13 as well is that they're robbing this one casino. You're doing it this way, and then they just barrel through that and put a bunch of comedy into that one thing. I think that to try and make a one-upped sequel to 11 in 12 here is that they put more heist into it, and I think that was a mistake because while it is fun, those parts aren't as refined, I think.
yeah, I don't know if they needed. I feel like they could have cut as I don't know. I like the scenes, but I feel like they could have cut out the
Oh yeah, I mean, because the only thing that the agoraphobic guy really does is that it introduces the concept of the
the
night
French guy.
fox. Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
and I feel like he could have done that other ways.
They could have done that so many other and just had the one heist of the egg or whatever they decide to be much bigger and much longer.
Yes,
And a lot of their stuff for the egg, they didn't do like it all fell apart. They all went to jail. Like
which
it
was
didn't work.
fun.
It's fine.
Yeah, and the actual stealing of the egg happens in a montage at the end of the movie, which is still cool because they get to show
Eh,
you how it happened,
yes,
but
but
it's not as fun as watching it happen in real time.
correct. How do you feel about Bruce Willis? Just being Bruce Willis?
Um,
Because I like Topher Grace. I don't know if I like Bruce Willis.
Honestly, that whole plot line of having Julia Roberts play Julia Roberts pretending to be someone else playing Julia Roberts, you could take it out. I'd be okay. I'm like, it's not, yeah, we do that joke once. It's kind of funny. That whole shtick goes on for like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah,
It's not that good. And I don't think having Bruce Willis there just kind of stand around and grin in the background really elevates it at all. Like, yeah, for the plot that needs to happen so they can all be in jail so that other things can transpire, but I don't know if that is the most fun way to do that sequence.
and we referenced this when we were talking Ocean's 11, but yeah, uh, I don't know if I'd even call this. I mean, yes, all the 11 are technically in this, but I would call this realistically, it's like an Ocean's 5.
Yeah, they I mean, the brothers take a back seat. Bernie Mac takes a back
Yen is
seat.
gone basically.
Yen is lost in the bag for 40 minutes of the
Saul's in
movie.
it for the last like 20 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, this is mainly a Brad Pitt, George Clooney, Matt Damon movie, which is fine, but
Yeah,
maybe
but I agree.
yeah, it works much better when they're all there because they all make up, a different part, obviously.
Yes, I know, I agree. I didn't notice it as much in the first movie, but I think I noticed it a lot more in the second. Was there's a ton of zoom ins, like zoom in on a character's face, okay, zoom in on the next
Yeah.
character's face.
Well, I think it happens more in this one compared to the first one because they're in a lot more large outdoor areas and you can do that. Because the other one, you're kind of in the casino for
I mean,
most of
there's
the
a couple
movie.
times where like they would zoom in from so and so's face, like they'd zoom in on Bernie Mac doing a little nod to someone at the casino to whatever. But
Well, that's
yes, it's
true.
way more obvious in the second one.
So we have already kind of mentioned that the Julia Roberts bit doesn't need to happen, but I do like that the whole sequence of events that causes them to try and do that as a plan. I like the whole bit of them all being arrested at different points. Again, just covered with really jamming music the whole time. It's great.
I like that. Wow. So context, folks, we watched the first one and the third one separately, and we ended up watching the second one together. But uh, it took this many times around for Hayden to realize, like, that's who she was. Julia Roberts was pretending to be Julia Roberts for the scene.
Well, no, no, no.
That's the whole bit,
I'm
dude.
I'm sure I got that on other viewings. I had
Uh,
just forgotten that. What?
I don't know, Hayden. I don't know.
I had just forgotten that that was the bit they're doing because I hadn't seen these in a while.
I don't know. I just that blew.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
lost my
yeah.
mind. I was like, what the fuck, Hayden? Come on.
No, you
Even so, they
misunderstand.
even referenced that at the train station too. They're like, has anyone ever asked her? And
Like, but they don't say who she's supposed to look like. I didn't get until they actually put that plan into motion that they're pointing out that she looks like Julia Roberts because obviously she is Julia Roberts.
sure. There is a line that Rusty says when Linus asks about that. He says, "It's not in my nature to be mysterious, but I can't talk about it." I was like, oh, again, just such a throwaway line, but so funny and so good.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else you have for 12? Because I mean, I didn't have as much
Um,
written, but
I think the dancing scene through the lasers is on one hand silly and a little bit unbelievable, but on the other hand, iconic at this point and
yes, no, I
really
agree with
fun.
both of those statements.
Like it's hard to juggle that because I think that's certainly after 11 they, and as I've said a couple times now, with this one they wanted to do bigger ergo better, and so they went a little bit further with the believability on some cases. So I think
Sure.
that scene is pushing it a little bit, but I've come to just really enjoy it at this point, especially just I also like the song they play during that.
And I think I referenced this when we watched this because I've tried to because I watched it and I am like, oh, I like this song, and I put the song in a playlist and I listened to the song. It
Yeah,
I find it to be super annoying actually without the visual of him doing the thing.
really.
Yeah,
Because
I
I
don't know
remember
what it
back when
is,
we
but
watched I I remember back when we watched Anatomy of a Fall, the song that is playing loudly in like,
oh, I love that song, dude. Oh,
see,
oh, it's so good.
well, no, because I remember you said
On
that
the
at the time.
timpanis. Yes, no, I still listen to that. It's still fucking great.
I find that song really annoying. Like I think we're kind of having an opposite reaction here.
Yeah, that's fine. We all have different opinions. It's all good.
Well, what would you give Ocean's 12?
Well, let me look at what I did give it because I don't remember to be honest.
So for me personally, I think this is a step down from the first one just because they're trying to do so many things and not all of them land as solidly. So, but it's still a ton of fun and obviously gorgeous scenery, gorgeous cast. For me, this is like a solid 4 out of 5. It's not as good as number one, but it is still a really enjoyable time.
Yeah, I'm at a 4. It's funny. I'm looking at my letterboxed, and it shows that I have reviewed the. Obviously, I've seen the movie more than this many times, but I've reviewed it 3 times. The
Yeah,
first time I said just a fun time. The music, the squad, the heist is just enjoyable to watch. But the whole egg thing, I prefer a casino heist.
yeah.
Second time, literally all I said was Catherine Zeta-Jones. And then the third time, which is the most recent one, all I said was she is insanely attractive, dear lord.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yes. So again, I would say a solid 4 out of 5.
Yeah, yeah. Well, folks, we're going to give you our final intermission here, and we'll be right back with Ocean's 13. Alrighty, Ocean's 13.
Ocean's 13. All right. 13.
And this one, as well as the cast of the 11 that were in the other two. This one adds in Ellen Barkin and Al Pacino, but everyone else also joins back in.
Before the movie even starts, before the credits even roll, when it shows the Warner Brothers.
I I had that written down too.
So this is something that I think Warner Brothers does, and I think A24 does, and not really any other studio
Sometimes
does this.
Paramount does it.
Nah, it's pretty rare. But I was curious to see if I could find a list of all the different cool, because if you don't know what we're talking about, folks, they will take their logos and then they will kind of tweak them to express something, some kind of aesthetic or style from the specific movie that they're talking about.
And in this one, they have a bunch of brightly colored neon lines come and like
It
cross
feels very
over the
Vegas,
logo.
yes.
Yes, yes, it does.
And I like that they go from that to a toy store, basically.
It was hard to tell where they were robbing originally.
Well, they went through the toy store and then through basically the side of the building into probably the bank next door.
Well, so for this one, we are back in Vegas, back on home turf, as it were.
And it feels right. I will, even regardless of, I don't know, it just feels right.
I think it does help because a lot of these characters function better. I don't know. I mean, just like the first one, I think they function better when they're all in the same place. That is Vegas. Yeah.
Again, I am glad that they took a detour and tried to do something different. Because honestly, if they did 3 movies that are all just heist movies in Vegas, I would be bored by the third one. I would be 100% bored.
I agree. And I remember not enjoying this one as much, but on a rewatch, had a great time.
Yeah, I like the Ruben arc. I like the Linus arc.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I think, again, this is because it's a third in a trilogy. You have already padded out quite a bit of, like, uh, there's enough background on a lot of things that you don't have to explain a whole lot. You know what the characters are. Now you can kind of dig deeper into other things like, oh, Don Cheadle writing letters, or Linus having some parent problems, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
For the longest time, though, I did not realize that it was Al Pacino. I just never made the connection.
Really?
Not the last, like I didn't realize it this last time we watched it, but I remember like the first couple times seeing this, I was like, I don't know who this guy is, but he's fucking wild as a person. Like,
Well,
he
I
doesn't
mean,
seem like a real person.
I've never been the biggest fan of Al Pacino, just in general. I don't know if he's a
It's
good actor. I think he just yells a lot. But I think in this, actually, I think he's actually a lot more nuanced than you
mhm,
know than he normally is, and so I kind of appreciate that.
agreed, agreed. I like that when they
I
come on
do
again.
like
This is in uh, what's the right? Not logistic, chronological. In chronological order of timing of the movie, right after they hear about Ruben and they're cutting to basically them coming off the plane or whatever. It takes about, again, 20 seconds of the movie for them to explain why Catherine Zeta-Jones and Julia Roberts are not there,
yes,
which I appreciate. They're like, oh, it's not their fight, and they just keep
and
going.
I feel like if they were there, this movie would feel overstuffed.
Oh yes, 100%. That'd be too many people, dude.
I mean, we'll get to it towards the end of the episode. I feel like there are at least one character, but doesn't actually need to be here. We'll get to it towards the end. It's fine
Okay, all right.
because he only shows up towards the end. Something I noticed while finishing up this one is that these are not crass movies, and that
No,
I
not at
mean,
all.
don't get me wrong. They they drop some hells, they drop some shits, but like compared to like even like a James Gunn movie, this is
Yes.
pretty family friendly 90% of the
Well,
movies, which is fairly impressive for how much
mhm.
back and forth comedy dialogue there is. Because I feel like if you make this today, it's going to be a lot more blue.
Well, yeah, I think that also comes down to it. Keep in mind, this was what, 2005 or whatever. I think at that time, in order
13
for it
was
to be,
2007, I think.
oh wow, but still, even 2007 to hit the most audience, I think, and these are all professional, criminals. I don't think they're going to be that blue.
Well, no, I don't know. It reminded me of, watching something like The Suicide Squad or like The Hangover. And I don't know. I feel like if you made a buddy comedy with multiple people like this now, it would have a lot of swear words. I don't know. I thought that it was impressive that they didn't.
Well, even think of, because it came out around the same time, think of The Italian Job. Doesn't have a lot of swearing? No.
That's true.
It
Well, I
doesn't have
mean,
as it doesn't have as big of a
I
crew.
guess it's also worth noting that both of these are not R rated.
No. And I'm glad they're not.
Yeah,
I
I
actually think it
agree.
would distract from it.
Yeah,
I think if there's a bunch of guns or sex or language, it just wouldn't feel. The reasons I think why this is a comfort watch is because it feels like a clean heist, if that makes any sense.
yes, and I think if they were to throw in things like guns and sex and violence, because I don't know if you ever, I, I, I don't know if you ever even see anyone get punched during any of these movies, um,
I don't think so. That's a good
because it
question.
would
That's a
kind
yeah.
of ruin the aesthetic of like the gentleman thief, which is
Exactly, exactly.
definitely still what this is going for. So
100%.
I think it definitely helps that none of those happen. I will say also, having now watched all three of these in the span of like 4 or 5 days or so, watching them back to back to back is the way to go, because especially 2 and 3 lead right into each other. I think it
Mhm.
is kind of
Well,
like
I
I
think
mean,
they all I mean, the first to second with the whole, like, "Oh, now the guy you just stole money from."
oh yeah, yeah. I don't know. I just kind of had the realization of, oh, this is. I would add all three of these to like the yearly rewatch list that I have. Like, oh, okay, we'll watch all three of Lord of the Rings all back to back to back because that's how it works. Those are kind of like these. I think that it works really well that way.
I like them back to back to back, but I don't know if I would do it every single year. I would do them
Oh,
every, like, 3 to 5 years? Heck yeah.
I mean, maybe yearly rewatch is the wrong word, but yeah, no, I definitely mean that.
Because, as I referenced, because everything is well established at this point, they can dive into, like, subplots of, like, Casey Affleck basically starting a revolution in Mexico.
That
Because
is
why not? It's
such
so
an
good.
out of nowhere subplot, and I love it.
But it never distracts from, again, they're servicing the plot of this is a revenge heist, which is such a fun concept, too, in itself.
And what I really love about this one, maybe compared to number 12,
12.
12, is that this one doesn't have like 20 minutes of sitting around trying to find a heist to do. This one, you're right into it.
Mhm.
And I like that this one is a lot quicker in the start. It might be a little bit longer in the end, but it feels like it gets going a lot more fast. That's not the right grammar. But
No, it's not, but that's okay.
yeah. Speaking of Casey Affleck in Mexico, I love his ridiculous, like, Western cowboy mustache he has in that.
Yes. Yes, it's
Like, it
fantastic.
completely looks glued on, but it's so
But it's
funny.
I think it's, so it looks glued on, but the thing is that might actually be his facial hair.
I mean, he had a kind of a creepy porn stash in the other two. That also might just be his facial hair.
Mhm. I like that they reference it throughout the movie, but the whole running joke of the soft open out of town preview.
It's very good.
Yeah, all very
Um,
good. And what I like about, I think, all 3 of these movies, none of them are over 2 hours.
I you know what? I'd have to look. I think they are all just right around 2 hours.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think they're all, like, basically, like, right at 2 hours.
Yep, and I mean, I think we've said it before in other episodes, but that is really an ideal run length for pretty much anything, unless you're,
Yes, obviously, there's
unless you're Christopher
outliers to
Nolan
that.
or Peter Jackson.
Sure, and maybe you could throw in Scorsese into that, but
Oh
sure.
yeah, no, for sure, yeah.
And then there's also, the subplot of Matt Damon's dad, because the second one, they reference his mom at the very end. Third
Yep,
one,
because
they
you get to
use
meet
his
his mom at the
dad.
very end. Yep,
Mhm.
yep, 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 yep. His fucking nose throughout the entire third
The
act of this
nose, it
just
sells, it works.
it just sells the work. It just fucking kills me in every scene because
Mhm.
like it's such a bad fake nose because like it just juts out like a beak. There's no like nasal bridge leading up to his forehead or anything. It just juts out at like a 15-degree angle. It's ridiculous. I love it.
I wouldn't call it it's sort of a subplot, but again, it's part of what they're quote unquote like the part of the heist is getting a bad review for the Five Diamond Award, but that poor reviewer guy.
Oh my god.
Oh, and there's a line that Saul says that I love: "All's fair in war." Like when they're fucking up his room.
Right?
Oof.
Because I think it's lines being like, I don't know, I feel bad about this. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, all
Mm-hmm.
fair is in war. Like, there's going to be collateral damage.
Yes, 100%. There's a point where, so when they're climbing up into the elevator shaft, I think it's Bernie Mac when they're all wearing the puffers. Some of them just look clearly uncomfortable to be in a elevator shaft, like when they're in like the ducts or whatever
I,
they want to call them.
I don't think Bernie Mac's in that elevator. I think it's just Clooney and Scott Kahn. But yes.
I don't remember. Either way, uh, that's a funny bit. But
Well, because
the go ahead.
I I was just gonna say no. I was just gonna say that they genuinely do look cramped.
Yes, which
That's
that's the
that's
part
all.
that I was like, actually looks. It's not this like it's like not realistic spacious space that they're gonna get shots of them in. It's them
Yeah.
squished in somewhere. I love the homage of using Claire de Lune at the same spot where Brad and George are talking about all the things Ruben have done for them. Very
Yep.
wholesome and a good use of the
Um.
song.
But and I also like that version of it because it's played on like an electronic cover and then it transitions into the symphony. It's just gorgeous. There's no version of Claire de Lune's that isn't just beautiful music.
Yes. And
Um,
like the line where they're like, "Oh, they built them a lot smaller back then," and like, they seem pretty big when they're talking about the casino. Yeah, yeah, so good.
Don Cheadle wins me back in this one.
Thank you,
Him doing
thank you.
his Evil Knievel bit is
Oh, it's so
hilarious.
good.
It's so funny. I actually rewind, or I guess rewind isn't really a term anymore, but like I backtracked it and I rewatched that scene twice. It's so funny.
Very good. And again, the subplot of him writing letters. Like we referenced it earlier, but like it's weirdly like super tender like
Yeah.
poetry that he's been writing while grinding through the earth in this drill that he writes to Ruben, who's in a like catatonic state.
Yeah. I did like how he gave them to Linus to read to Ruben, and Linus gives like one line and he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna leave these on the table. You look at these in your own time. I'm That's super awkward. I don't want to do that. I thought that was funny and very keeping with his character.
Speaking of when he's looking like I don't know if you noticed it, there is so much gold in Ruben's room. Like Jesus Christ, like the
Yeah.
walls, the framings, everything is gold. It may not be like actual gold, but everything is painted gold. The entire room, the bed sheets,
Well,
everything.
it's just like there was a gold cell phone in this, and I like that for the year 2007 or whatever. Like, yeah, it was still technically just a Motorola, and that was like or
Hmm.
maybe like a BlackBerry or something. Like, wow, this is the height of technology. I'm like, I don't know, man.
And again, I think this was maybe a minute or two of the movie. Doesn't really add much to the plot, but sometimes it's just like the "Are you watching Oprah?" bit where they talk about giving them the whole.
Right?
It's so
What did that
funny,
have to do
dude.
with anything
It had
other than
nothing
Oprah
to do
shows
with
up
it.
later at the end of the movie?
Yes, but again, I think it gets just showcases like the not just natural chemistry, but like the way that good writing plus George Clooney and Brad Pitt together. It's so good. It's so fucking like they can do anything.
Well, I mean, there's almost no dialogue in that scene, but like both
Hmm.
of them do a really good job of conveying like a sense of desperation and loss because they still haven't heard anything back from Ruben at that point in that scene. Just
Yes.
doing their facial expressions. It's really good.
And from that, they jump to Livingston having trouble with his card dealing thing. And I love, again, they delve more into his like awkward,
Yep.
nervous character where he's having to call Eddie Izzard on the phone, be like, "Hey, can you help me?" But also don't tell them that I need your help, kind of thing.
I see. For me, I'm not sure that plot went anywhere. because
No,
he was
again, it
captured
didn't
at the
really.
end.
Yes,
And
yes.
what did Edgy Izzard do? I mean, did those machines never really did anything interesting at the end? I'm not sure what that plot line was for.
Well, so the machines he actually had on the floor were not his machines. They switched those out for the ones Eddie Izzard brought in, which were the ones Livingston actually uh, tweaked or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, okay. See, there was a lot of plot going on at that point. It was kind of hard to keep track of what the actual um
Yeah, they're
heist was.
well, they were. This is, I think, this is where this movie is more than the first movie, and it's still being as casino, because the first movie is very straightforward of this is how we're getting to this pile of money,
It
whereas
was very
this
much
movie
we're
is,
robbing the vault and that's all we're doing.
yeah, and this movie is we're doing like 9 different cons all at the same time kind of thing.
But I think this one, because they also kind of do that in number two, where there is multiple different things that they're trying. I think this one still does that formula better, though, comparatively, because they are back in Vegas. I think the setting just helps them so much. And something that I've written down here is that because this all takes place in Vegas, there's not a whole lot of quote unquote sightseeing. Because in 12, I think part of the reason they are doing some of those smaller heists is because they want to show off Amsterdam or they want to show off Italy and they want to
Sure,
be like, oh,
I get that.
look at these locations. And, as a result, those scenes happening in those locations aren't as interesting. I like that this one, they're back in pretty much one hotel the whole movie,
Hmm.
and because of that, it's a lot more focused where it needs to be.
Agreed. Agreed.
I love the little play on words there with Al Pacino's character's last name being Bank, so they can
Hmm.
look, we're robbing the bank. I mean, it is
Well,
a simple joke, but I think it was funny.
name of the hotel, name of the guy. Yeah, it works well.
Yeah,
When they enlist Benedict, so he's in, I think he might be in the same fitting room that they had Saul in, but again, Danny's like, "Oh, are you ready?" And he's like, "Oh, I was born ready."
and
And
he
then
rolls his eyes.
he
It's
rolls his
very
eyes.
good.
Oh, it's very good. Very, very good.
Yes. Well, it's like
But
I also like the line of, "Oh, are you sure this will work?" Well, yeah, it worked on you.
yeah, come on, dude. The Gilroy, the whole like scent thing for the cougar.
Uh,
Again,
that
certain amount of
that bit of CGI there was really questionable and didn't look great, but
it was okay, but
yeah.
it was still again comical. Like where she basically almost gets knocked, like she's bowled over with this, like she's literally like almost can't stand up.
Well, because remember in the scene where they're talking about doing that,
No,
Brad
I
Pitt
know,
is
I know.
constantly telling him like, no, 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 oh, you need a stronger dose, you need a stronger dose, and Linus is like, oh no, I don't need that. So clearly they didn't listen to Linus because they gave her way too
Yes,
much.
yes.
When Casey Affleck is still in Mexico and he's sitting in that like restaurant and he's talking to those other workers at the plant. They're clearly drinking out of Modelo bottles, but they've been taped over with a fake label. I just thought it was funny. It's like, why would you use something that's so recognizable? Because nothing else looks like that. Because it's got the gold foil on the top, it's
Mm-hmm.
got the
Mm-hmm.
specific shape. Like, why not just get like regular nondescript bottles? Because that's if I can see that just by quickly looking at it, I'm sure other people would have would have noticed.
Probably. Again, it's just a small prop, but yes, I agree. It's pretty, I would say, iconic as a shape. When the brothers are both in underground on the drill, there's a point where, like, uh, I can't think of his name, but the Fohawk brother basically actually gives Casey Affleck a compliment. Like, oh, no,
Yeah,
it's when they're doing the computer stuff. He's like, oh, I'm glad you did a good job with that. He's like, oh yeah, that's why they picked me. And then which is such a brother thing to do.
and then Casey Affleck's like, or no, and then Fohawk brother is like, "See, I tried to be nice to you, and you spit in my face." In which case, Casey Affleck that's returns, "Oh, what? That's your face? I thought it was your ass."
But I don't know if you heard the specific wording. So, the phrase is like, oh, I'm offering an olive branch to you. you know what he said? Which I thought was
Yeah.
hilarious, and I feel like it's such a little. He said olive basket, which I thought was super fucking funny. Because I'm sure in his kind of rednecky mind, he's like, "Oh, it's just a basket of olives."
Oh, see, I didn't even pick up on that, I think.
I've had this.
Talked
This
about
was
evil
in the
looking
first movie
evil.
and the third, and it's. I think it's. I can't. I can't find the right song from it, but there's both bits of. So this music, obviously, again, we asked, is it funk? Is it jazz? There's bits of bongo that I think work really well. There's also, and I cannot find the song, where it almost like they recorded the sound of poker chips clinking or dropping, and it's just
It's
little
probably
touches
a
like that, dude.
it's
So
probably a
good.
blending of composed music and, like, audio engineering because that's something
Mhm.
that Hans Zimmer does all the time. There's lots of stuff in The Dark Knight, which is just recorded like street noise, and then it becomes music later. So I'm sure they probably just added in the sound effects of chips.
I'm glad that they didn't use Claire de Lune again for basically the same scene. They went to This Town by,
Frank Sinatra,
Sinatra with the fireworks.
which I again, good song, but I think it also plays back to the line of, oh, you shook Sinatra's hand, you should know better. And I like it. It's a
Yes.
nice callback to that as well.
Mhm.
I mean, speaking of that, I like in the opening bit where they're showing uh Ruben getting ripped off. It really looks like they very nearly pushed him out of that building. Like, if you don't come in with the context knowing that that isn't what happens, like, it kind of looks like that might be what happens.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot else to say about 13 other than I enjoyed it more than two, but not more than one.
Yeah, I mean, if we were ranking them, I would go 1, 3, 2, but again, I wouldn't that doesn't mean 2 is a bad movie.
No. What would you give it score wise?
I would say it's still probably like a 4 because it doesn't do a ton of new things. You're still kinda going back to things you already know, like, oh, they're going back to doing a casino thing.
I think for me, this is a 4.5 just because it is going back to what made 11 good. It's just not as good. It's a little bit more over bloated. Oh, right, I was going to mention. They snuck in the Night Fox again at the end, and I feel like he doesn't need to be there. Like, he offers nothing to the plot. It's just a, hey, you saw him in the last movie. Look, he's back. It's like a freaking Marvel cameo,
Well,
and
it's because,
I think
he
you
was
could entirely
enlisted
cut it
by,
out.
they are still showing that Benedict is still kind of a like, they're backstabbing each other, but it's a little more friendly now.
Oh, no, I mean, I understand why, but for a series that is so tightly wound and tightly paced, it felt like an extra that didn't need to be there. I guess that's kind of what I gained from that is that, yeah, it's fun. It's fun to, oh, look, it's him again, but I don't know if that needed to be there at the end because that ending does kind of drag out a little bit.
Well, but because he was in it and they realized that Benedict was trying to double cross them, then they took all the money that they were supposed to give him and invest it for him in a camp, and that's how they transitioned to Oprah. Like, I
It
don't know
is
if they
funny.
could, which is funny, and I don't know if they could have gotten there without that.
I suppose. I don't know. Yeah, for me, this is like a 4.5 out of 5. It's still pretty damn good. I just think 11's better.
Oh, 100%. Because there's nothing you can't beat that lightning in the bottle of the first movie of like
No.
this
And
new experience.
I am kind of glad they stopped
Well,
because
100%.
I think if they were to come back with Ocean's 14, I think the
You mean
magic
our
would have been
Ocean's
gone at
8?
that point.
I think God, it would have been not very good.
Well, I don't want to pass judgment on Ocean's 8 if I haven't watched it, but I haven't heard anyone
All
say
right.
that they really enjoyed it.
Agreed, and I don't think it's even the same director.
No,
There's,
no, it's F. Gary Gray who did the NWA movie and a couple other stuff, but
Oh wait,
no,
he did the Straight
it's
Outta Compton one?
I think so.
Really? Because I mean, I saw that, and as someone who knows almost nothing about rap, it was actually really enjoyable. I liked it a lot, so I'm kind of
I
surprised.
might be misremembering, but I think it's the same guy.
Okay,
I mean, I will be down to try Ocean's 8 eventually, but I
maybe
clearly
at
already
some point.
really enjoy this.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Well, that's our thoughts on Oceans 11, 12, and 13. If you agree with us, if you disagree with us, come on to our uh, find us on your social media of choice and let us know. Now we're going to transition into what now?
Let's take a break from movies and such like that for a second. We'll do icebreaker audio.
Okay. And why don't you explain to
Many
our
viewers.
many viewer what that is?
So once a week, once an episode, whatever you want to call it, Hayden and I will pick either a pre-written like icebreaker question, or we make one up on the spot. Whatever. Basically, these are questions that you might hear at a job or a new school or something like that. Basically, just ways to get to know someone. We started doing this so you would hear some backstory about your hosts. That way, we're not just some random two dudes that occasionally talk about movies. So these really could be anything, and obviously, these are just kind of shooting from the hip, just opinions and thoughts. So sometimes it's a quick little turnaround of a 1 minute little yes, no, or whatever. Sometimes this takes 10 minutes to chat about, and we trim it down. Who knows? Either way, that's what this is.
And today's icebreaker question is if you could insert yourself into any fictional world like
Hmm.
a, like a Harry Potter or a Lord of the Rings or what have you and live there as a background character, so you wouldn't be Bilbo or something like that. Which would it be and why?
Good question. I would say I think it's going to be some Wes Anderson movie,
Really?
and it. Oh yeah, like
Okay.
put me in as a background scout on in Moonrise Kingdom or something like that,
I
or
mean, that's a good choice.
yeah, I think
I'm
that'd be super
surprised you wouldn't go
fun.
with Life Aquatic.
Oh, that's yeah. I think I would. Yeah, I would probably be. I would want to be one of the like unnamed interns that they have on Life
Hmm.
Aquatic,
Yeah,
who
yeah.
only get half credit for their work, even though they get shot at by pirates. Man, I would love to talk about that movie. I love that movie so much. Ah,
Do we
um,
want to do that as an episode?
I mean, we can review our schedule and talk about it. Sure. What about you,
No, no,
Hayden?
that's I mean, that's a very solid choice. That's a very solid choice. I mean,
And it doesn't have to
this
be
only
from a
has one
movie. It can
answer
be
for
from a
me.
book or whatever. But
It could be, but mine is technically both. I feel like I would be a very good hobbit. I feel like, me living in a nice comfortable hobbit hole where I bake bread and, make
that does
good
seem
food
very
and
you.
and sit around and read old books and sit on my porch and do a lot of nothing. Tend to garden. I feel like I was born for that role. I feel like I would fit into that really well.
I,
But yeah, I feel like, you know, put me in next to like the Shire or put me down by the prancing pony. I work at the tavern or something.
sure.
100% I could see myself doing that.
Would you want to work at a tavern? Speaking as someone who works sort of at a tavern, Hayden, you would not like this. You, as someone who doesn't like people, like a customer facing job, you would
That's a fair
fucking hate
point.
that.
That is a fair point. I think I would like to go to a tavern. I probably wouldn't like
There
to
we
work
go.
there.
Yes, I
But
think
yeah,
that's
I could absolutely see myself living in the Shire 100%.
no. I think both mine answers and yours are a very accurate for us.
Yeah,
And
I mean, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
you being a whimsical scuba diving adventurer, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, you could probably take Freddy into that with you,
yeah, yes. He could have a fun little bandana or something that's got fish on it or something, or
but
sharks
he would
or
have to be stop motion animated the whole time.
Well, no, but he would just have to be very like everything would have to be pastels. He would have to know how to just sit there in a
To
very
fit in with the movie,
specific
he would
spot,
also have
framed. Yes.
like like a bright yellow like voice box thing so he could talk to you.
Mm-hmm. Something, yeah, something he could press with his
Yeah.
paw. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, folks, sometimes this section is long, sometimes it just makes sense and it's nice and quick. So that was Icebreaker Audio. From there, we usually do a what I watched, what I want to watch, what's coming out, either TV show, movies, limit series, anything like that. So we reference anything we've seen in the last week or anything we want to see in the near future. So Hayden, what
Sure,
have
sure,
you
sure.
watched this last week?
Well, so this evening I literally came from a movie. Um, I I like going out to the Olympia Film Society. They show odd things and reruns and interesting things like that. And they were doing a reshowing of The Apartment from Billy Wilder back in the day. I had never seen it. You know, it's always held up as oh, this is like the first great sitcom. This is what everything's modeled after. I was interested to check it out. It was fine. It was, I mean, there are definitely funny bits. I enjoyed it. Probably wouldn't ever rewatch it, but it was cool. Always nice to see something filmed in black and white and have it still look very nice, though. So that was
Sure.
fun. Um, this coming Saturday, I have tickets to watch The Day the Earth Blew Up because uh,
Did you mean
one,
the Earth stood still? What?
no. This is the full length hand animated Looney Tunes movie coming out
Oh, right, right.
that
I completely
for
forgot about
whatever
that.
reason they have done almost no advertising for.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen I
I,
didn't. Again,
I'm
I did not even know it was coming out.
Yeah, it's frustrating how little marketing they're doing. I don't know why, but I really enjoy both the Looney Tunes and I really enjoy 2D hand drawn animation. So I'm looking forward to watching that. But other than that, Mickey 17,
Oh yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah,
A couple
that's
of my
kind
friends
of all
have
I'm
already
looking
seen
forward
it
to.
and said it was pretty. People have said it's kind of weird, but it's still pretty fun.
Well, what are you looking forward to?
Mickey 17 for sure. Uh, F1 is dropping more because as it's
Oh
actually
yeah,
coming up now. So there was another trailer. There's a couple stills that have come out more. Uh, yeah, looks like a really I that might be obviously there's a lot of year left to go, but that might be the main movie that I'm looking forward to this year. Um, there was also a new trailer for Thunderbolts. You saw it, right,
oh,
Hayden?
where they made fun of A24? Yes.
Well, it's not even like they made fun of it. They just actually like did a non-traditional Marvel trailer. I feel like
I thought it was funny. Yeah.
I thought it was funny. I thought it was like again, I am more interested than not interested in it because
I'm gonna wait to see a
they're
little bit more
trying to. I
first,
feel
but
like they're trying to do something different.
yeah.
What I watched this last week, well, if you don't already know, folks, I also have a podcast where I talk literally about this called Dunk's Movie Corner or Dunk's Movie Corner Pod or podcast, whatever you want to call it. So you can find that in all the other places that you can find this podcast. But so since we last talked about Captain America: Brave New World last week, I watched Venom: The Last Dance, which was just as bad as you think it was going to be. I
Because Venom 2 was pretty dumpster fiery. Was this one worse?
different worse, but yes.
Damn, that's disappointing.
Yeah. And wow, does Tom Hardy look like he aged really rough cuz
Well, yeah, he
the
looks
first one
rough.
was not that long ago and he looks
I mean, he
pretty
wasn't.
rough now, dude.
Well, yeah,
I rewatched The Royal Tenenbaums because of Gene Hackman stuff.
that's a
Uh
good movie.
it's a really like no, it's not my
It
favorite Wes
is
Anderson, but it's really
more
good.
sad than Wes Anderson usually goes.
I mean, yes and no. I'd still give it like a 4.5 out of 5. It's really good. I rewatched
Sure.
Hoosiers. which I had never
Yeah.
seen. Um,
Well,
it's
I mean, to be fair,
okay.
you're not a big sports movie guy, so
Not really, and, like, it's very again, I get why it's wholesome and everyone knows it, but, like, you can tell the ending of the movie in the first 5, it's super, super predictable.
yeah.
Um, I found something on Netflix called The Sum of All Fears. This is a Jack
Oh yeah,
Ryan story, which
I've
I
heard of
know
it.
I know who Jack Ryan is, and I know there's been TV shows, several movies with different actors. This is my first little tiptoe in. Uh, this is young Ben Affleck and a younger-ish Morgan Freeman. It was good, not great, but I can clearly see like, oh, the character could actually be interesting. So
I've
I
heard
might
good
check
things
out
about
some
the
other
John
stuff.
Krasinski one.
Yeah, that's also what I've heard. So I'll check that out at some point. I'm not like jumping at the bullet, but uh, I rewatched with our dad because I was super fucking sick like I had like pretty strong food poisoning on
Oh,
Monday.
really?
Oh yeah, dude, I literally lost 3 pounds in like 12 hours. I was
Hey, I'm trying to do that.
not trust me, I would not recommend it because things were coming out of all different places and I could not control it.
Jesus.
Yeah. Either way, so he put on Red Planet. This is from the year 2000. This is
Oh,
Val
with
Kilmer, Tom
yeah,
Sizemore, and Trinity from The Matrix.
Carrie Ann
And
Moss. I'd
while
forgotten.
yes, well she's in the whole movie throughout it, and she is the love interest, but she is just on the spaceship, just pressing buttons. That's it. That's the like if you look at her objectively, she doesn't really add much to the story, and she's literally just there flipping switches. That's it. So that's okay. It's again, there's so many spots where you see again. This came out in 2000, and you can see they do something similar in The Martian. 15 years later, they do something
Yeah,
similar in Interstellar. 15 years later, like there's several spots where this did it okay, and then others did it way better way later.
sure.
Um, I
Is that the
rewatched
one
The
with
Lighthouse.
the space cockroaches?
Yes, it is. I rewatched The Lighthouse, and I don't want to say anything about that yet. And then I
Because that's
also
our
rewatched.
upcoming episode, folks.
Yes, I was trying to bury the lead at least a little bit there, but that's okay. Um, and then I rewatched Furiosa, and I, I do think this got a bad rap. This movie is much better than I think people gave it credit for.
See,
Should
because
they
I
have?
remember really not liking it
And I
and
thought
being very underwhelmed.
if no, again, I see why people think that. But okay, if you just, I would say give it another shot. If you have it some time at some point, give it another shot because
So
should they
I
have waited
have
so
heard
long between Fury Road and because again, I think they waited almost a decade,
they did, yes.
and I
Well, I mean,
think
and I have heard that it was advertised poorly, and it was advertised as like this Fury Road esque action movie, and it's
and
definitely
it's
not
not.
that. So
There is
I
still some
think my
very good action
disappointment in
in
it,
it.
yeah. So I think my disappointment in it was that I went in expecting another Fury Road, and this is essentially like a long, sprawling character odyssey.
Hmm. Which that's because if they had released this like a year after Fury Road, I
Right?
think that would have been perfect.
Like, why did you wait a decade?
Well, he made what was that other movie that did not do very well that was okay?
1,000 Years of Longing, and it was
Yeah,
terrible.
it was really not very good. And then I really hope they don't wait another decade to make The Wasteland, which is like the backstory to Tom Hardy's. He's going to be too old.
Well, and and Furiosa underperformed very badly, so
Mhm.
they might not be making the Wasteland at all.
Which is such a bummer because again, Fury Road is basically perfect. And again, if you come back to this, it is. I would probably give this 3.5, maybe 4 if I'm generous, but that's pretty good considering. I feel like how much people shit on this. Either way,
Well,
that's my week of movies, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
sure. Well, anything else we want to add into this 2 hour long episode before we sign out?
I like folks, before we even started recording, I was like, "Oh, this might be really fucking long. This might be a 2 hour." Like Hayden's like, "Oh, it's not gonna hit 2 hours. That's crazy." I was like, "Dude,
Well, because I'm sitting here thinking, well, the Ocean's movies are fast and fun. It won't take that long. And we're wrapping
and
up
I'm
our
sure
Ocean's
we'll
11 talk about it, at an hour 45, and we still have icebreakers and things to do
and yes, we will probably trim out some. So I bet it's probably gonna be more like an hour 40 or something like that. But that's still a pretty long episode. Either way,
for us, yeah.
we should at least end this with, uh, this has been episode 39. Listen to episode 38 through episode 1 if you so choose. And next week for episode 40 is The Lighthouse, which Hayden already kind of referenced, and I already kind
Well,
of
we
referenced. But
might take that out in the edit. So,
either way, yes, next week is The Lighthouse, starring Robert Pattinson and William Dafoe, and there's really no one else in that movie. You could find it on HBO Max if you want to watch along, or however you want to do it. But that's what we're watching. That's what we're going to talk about.
if you have never heard of or seen this movie, genuinely, it's better if you know nothing about it before you go in. It
Agreed.
is a unique experience.
And such a departure from Oceans 11, 12, and 13. Like, as
We are
far
really
possible.
we are really jumping between genres here. Well, thanks for listening, folks, and we'll hope to catch you again in the next episode.